You know that person who seems to accomplish extraordinary things while appearing to do nothing. They disappear for weeks, show no visible hustle, yet emerge with ideas that change everything. While everyone else is drowning in calendars and checking off endless lists, they're somewhere, processing, just existing in this almost mysterious state of calm. Society calls them lazy. But here's what's really happening. These people operate on what psychologists call a different plane of consciousness. They're not avoiding work. They're doing the kind of work that actually matters. While the rest of us chase what Carl Jung called dopamine from checklists, they're engaged in something far more dangerous to the status quo. Think about it. In a world obsessed with performance, what's more threatening than someone who refuses to perform? Someone who refuses to perform on command. Someone who can't be controlled by the cheap incentives of likes, promotions, and status. This person is a glitch in the matrix, and the system's immune response is to label them lazy, so you don't realize they've found an escape hatch. This is why they make people uncomfortable. Not because they're lazy, but because they represent everything our hyperactive culture has rejected. The wisdom of stillness, the power of depth, the genius that emerges not from grinding, but from what looks like nothing. But here's the twist that changes everything. What if this apparent laziness isn't a character flaw, but a form of psychological sophistication? What if these individuals have unconsciously discovered something that the rest of us are frantically trying to avoid? What if their refusal to conform to our exhausting rhythm isn't rebellion? It's intelligence. Carl Jung understood this when he wrote about the shadow, that part of ourselves we've rejected and pushed into darkness. Our culture has made stillness, contemplation, and unstructured time into shadow qualities. We've collectively decided that if you're not visibly producing, you're worthless. And yet, from this rejected darkness comes the very creativity our world desperately needs. The lazy, ambitious person isn't the problem. They're the solution to a problem we didn't even know we had. They're showing us what we've lost in our race toward nowhere. If you recognize yourself as someone who operates on a different frequency, comment below, "I see the genius in stillness." But here's what society doesn't want you to know about these people. That hidden knowledge. It's about to shatter everything you believe about success. You see, what we call laziness is actually society's greatest fear made visible. Think about it. When was the last time you sat in complete stillness without feeling guilty? When did you last allow yourself to just exist without producing something to justify your worth? That creeping anxiety you feel when you're not being productive. That's not your inner wisdom speaking. That's the voice of a culture that has made busyness into a religion and turned your natural rhythm into a sin. Jung called this the shadow. Everything we've rejected about ourselves gets pushed into darkness. But here's the twist. Our entire society has created a collective shadow around stillness, contemplation, and what looks like doing nothing. We've made these essential human capacities into something shameful. Jung experienced this himself. After his painful break with Freud, he entered what the world saw as a period of creative collapse. His colleagues thought he was wasting his potential. In reality, during this lazy period of deep inner exploration, he developed the core theories that would change psychology forever. And the lazy, ambitious person, they refuse to participate in this collective madness. While you're burning yourself out chasing external validation, they've discovered something revolutionary. Their worth isn't tied to their output. They operate from what Jung called inner necessity, not the frantic need to prove themselves, but a deeper calling that most people have completely lost touch with. This is why they're dangerous. They expose the ugly truth behind our productivity obsession. Every time you see someone comfortable in their own stillness, part of you remembers what you've sacrificed. Every time you witness someone following their natural energy rather than forcing themselves into artificial schedules, You feel the weight of your own imprisonment. So society projects its shame onto them. Lazy, unmotivated, irresponsible. But projection is just psychology's way of saying we're pointing at our own reflection in someone else's mirror. The real question isn't why they're lazy. It's why the rest of us are so terrified of stopping. Because in the silence, in the stillness, in those moments when we're not performing, that's where we might discover who we actually are beneath all the doing. And for a culture built on external validation, that possibility is absolutely terrifying. But if this is true, why do some people instinctively know to protect their stillness, while others burn out chasing endless approval? The answer lies in understanding that these people aren't operating from one psychological blueprint. They're a living constellation of three powerful forces working in perfect harmony. If you're ready to stop apologizing for your natural rhythm, comment below. I reclaim my shadow. First, there's what Jung called the eternal youth. This isn't childishness. It's the fierce protection of infinite possibility. While others rush to lock themselves into careers and identities, the lazy, ambitious person refuses to settle. They live in what psychologists call provisional life, always sensing that their real work, their true calling, lies just beyond the next horizon. You know this feeling, don't you? That sense that you're meant for something bigger, something that hasn't revealed itself yet. That's the eternal youth speaking, the part of you that would rather remain pure potential than become a diminished reality. But here's where it gets fascinating. This resistance to commitment isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's keeping the channel open for something genuinely extraordinary to emerge. The second force is the wise old man, the part that emerges from all that contemplative silence. While others mistake their withdrawal for laziness, something profound is happening in those depths. Einstein called it combinatory play, that mysterious process where ideas dance with each other in the unconscious until breakthrough patterns emerge. Tesla understood this too. He could build entire inventions in his mind, perfecting every detail before touching a single tool. His laboratory wasn't physical, it was psychological. His greatest work happened in what looked like empty space. And then there's the trickster energy, the part that disrupts systems simply by existing outside them. The lazy, ambitious person doesn't need to rebel. Their very presence exposes the absurdity of our productivity worship. They're dangerous, not because they break rules, but because they reveal that the rules themselves are broken. Think about this. Every major breakthrough in history came from someone who refused to play by the existing rules. Someone who had the audacity to spend time in seeming idleness while revolutionary ideas gestated in the darkness. These three forces, infinite potential, deep wisdom, and system disruption, they don't work separately. They're a psychological symphony, each note essential to the whole. But knowing this changes nothing if you can't overcome the voice in your head that's already forming objections. If you feel the call of infinite potential within you, comment below. I honor my constellation. But let's bring this down from the realm of archetypes and into your reality. Because for many of you listening, this isn't just a fascinating theory. It's the story of your life. You may have spent years believing you were fundamentally flawed, out of sync with the world, or simply not trying hard enough. That ends today. If you've ever felt the sting of being misunderstood, listen closely for the echoes of your own experience in these three undeniable signs. This is how you know your laziness is actually your genius trying to breathe. First sign, your breakthroughs arrive like lightning, not by assembly. While others are painstakingly building their ideas brick by brick, researching, outlining, forcing connections, your most profound insights simply arrive. They appear in your mind almost fully formed, often during a moment of complete stillness, in the shower, on a long walk, or in that quiet space just before you fall asleep. They feel less like something you created and more like something you received. This isn't magic. It's the tangible result of your unconscious mind working tirelessly in the background, connecting dots that your conscious mind isn't even aware of. While the world sees you doing nothing, you're actually processing reality on a level they can't access. Second sign: productivity. Hacks feel like a cage, not a key. You've tried it all: the time blocking, the Pomodoro technique, the color-coded planners. But every time you try to force your natural rhythm into one of these rigid boxes, it feels like you're suffocating. It doesn't just fail to work, it actively crushes your spirit and kills your creative impulse. This isn't a sign of indiscipline. It is the wise, protective instinct of your psyche, rejecting a system that was never designed for it. Your mind knows that true genius cannot be scheduled into 25-minute increments. Your resistance is not a flaw. It is a profound act of self-preservation. Third sign: your energy is an ocean, not a machine. You are not designed for consistent, linear output from 9 to 5. You are a force of nature. Your energy has tide. There will be long periods of apparent calm, days, even weeks, where the tide is out and the world sees only an empty shore. Society calls this laziness. You must learn to call it incubation, because when your tide rushes back in, it comes with the force of a tsunami. In a single day of inspired, obsessive focus, you can accomplish more than most people do in a month. This rhythm of deep rest followed by intense action isn't a problem to be fixed. It is the very source of your power. If you recognize these signs as the story of your life, comment below, "I'm not lazy, I'm incubating." If this description feels like coming home to yourself, then you must understand the truth. You're not broken. You are not failing. You are simply playing a different game by a different set of rules. But even as a part of you feels the deep relief of this recognition, there is another voice, isn't there? A voice of doubt, already whispering objections in your mind. A voice programmed by a lifetime of cultural conditioning. And that is the voice we must now turn to face. I hear you. Right now, your mind is racing with objections. But I need to pay bills. Society will reject me if I'm not productive. How do I know I'm not just making excuses for being lazy? Feeling that resistance? That's not a personal failure. It's your programming. You've been trained day in and day out to believe a simple lie. Your worth is your output. Stillness equals death. Think about it. When was the last time you just sat in silence without feeling that itch to grab your phone? It's terrifying, isn't it? But let's examine what you're really afraid of. You're afraid that if you stop performing, people will see through your mask and discover you're not who you pretend to be. You're terrified that beneath all the doing, there might be nothing, or worse, something so powerful it would demand you change everything about how you live. Here's the truth you're avoiding. You already know this path calls to you. When you see someone living from their authentic rhythm, something in you recognizes itself. That recognition terrifies you because it means acknowledging how far you've drifted from your own nature. The question isn't whether you can afford to follow this path. It's whether you can afford not to. Because what's the alternative? More years of exhaustion disguised as achievement. More nights lying awake knowing you're living someone else's life. More mornings dragging yourself toward work that feeds your bank account but starves your soul. Jung called this soul loss, the gradual erosion of who you really are in service of who you think you should be. And here's what makes this even more difficult. The lazy, ambitious path isn't about becoming irresponsible. It's about becoming responsible to your deepest calling rather than society's shallow demands. It's not about avoiding work. It's about distinguishing between work that drains you and work that feeds your soul. The practical concerns are real, but they're not the real obstacle. The real obstacle is your terror of discovering who you might become if you stopped betraying yourself every single day. This isn't about quitting everything tomorrow. It's about recognizing that your exhaustion isn't a badge of honor. It's a symptom of spiritual starvation. If you're choosing authenticity over approval, comment below, "I trust my inner necessity." So how do you begin to reclaim what you've lost? How do you start honoring your authentic rhythm in a world that punishes it? It starts with one simple recognition. You already know your natural rhythm. You've just been trained to ignore it. There's a difference between the passive fantasy that keeps you stuck and what Jung called active imagination, a disciplined dialogue with the deepest parts of yourself. This isn't about escaping reality. It's about accessing the reality beneath the performance. Here's how you begin. Create 1 hour of protected time daily. Not for productivity, not for goals, just for what looks like doing nothing. In this space, you're not lazy. You're receptive. You're practicing what Jung understood as the play instinct acting from inner necessity. During this time, pay attention to what emerges when you stop forcing. Notice the ideas that surface when you're not trying to be brilliant. Watch what happens when you give your mind permission to wander without purpose. This is active imagination in practice. Conscious engagement with unconscious content. You're not passively consuming thoughts. You're dialoguing with them. Ask questions. Follow threads. Let your mind play with possibilities the way Tesla played with his invisible machines. But here's the key. You'll know you're on the right path when this laziness begins to feel like the most important work of your life. When the ideas that emerge during these periods carry more vitality than anything you've forced into existence. Jung called this following your vocation. Not a career, but an inner calling that acts like a law of God from which there is no escape. This isn't about finding your passion. It's about recognizing the force that's already moving through you when you stop fighting it. Your energy has tides, just like the ocean. There are natural periods of flow and natural periods of stillness. The lazy, ambitious person honors both. They understand that the fallow periods aren't empty. They're pregnant with possibility. Start paying attention to your natural rhythms. When do ideas come easiest? When does your mind naturally want to wander? When do you feel most alive? These aren't distractions from your real work. They are your real work trying to get your attention. The transformation begins the moment you stop apologizing for who you naturally are. If you're committed to protecting your sacred stillness, comment below, "I follow my vocation." When you finally give yourself permission to operate this way, something extraordinary happens. You stop apologizing for your rhythm and start trusting it. You discover that what the world called laziness was actually your psyche, protecting something sacred. Your connection to the source of genuine creativity. This is what Jung meant when he talked about individuation, becoming who you truly are rather than who society demands you to be. You're no longer performing productivity. You're living from authentic power. And here's what changes. The ideas that emerge from your stillness carry a different quality. They're not manufactured, they're revealed. They come with their own energy, their own momentum, their own certainty. You recognize them immediately because they feel like coming home to yourself. People will notice. They'll see someone who seems to accomplish more while doing less, who radiates calm in a world of frantic energy, who speaks with the authority that comes from inner alignment rather than external validation. Some will be drawn to this energy. Others will be threatened by it. Both reactions tell you the same thing. You're operating on a frequency that our hyperactive culture has forgotten how to receive. You become what Jung called a cultural corrective, not by rebelling against the system, but by embodying what the system has forgotten. Your authentic rhythm becomes a reminder of what's possible when someone chooses depth over speed, quality over quantity, being over doing. This isn't about superiority. It's about function. In a world addicted to the surface, someone needs to mine the depths where all real treasure lies. In a culture that worships action, someone needs to demonstrate the power of conscious stillness. The lazy, ambitious person isn't lazy at all. They're operating on a timeline that transcends the quarterly mindset. They're not avoiding the work. They're doing the work that actually transforms things. While others optimize for efficiency, they optimize for emergence. If you're ready to stop betraying your true nature, comment below. I operate from my depths. And share this with someone who needs to hear this message. Your job isn't to convince anyone. Your job is to trust the intelligence of your own nature, to honor the rhythm that calls to you, and to follow the vocation that speaks through your stillness. Because in a world that has forgotten how to listen, your silence becomes the most powerful sound of all. The question now isn't whether this path is right for you. The question is, how long will you keep betraying what you know to be true